While the IT sector has been in focus, Business Today's managing editor Siddharth Zarabi sat down for a tete-a-tete with Nasscom's new chairman for an insight into what the prospects and outlook are for the sector. Listen in.
Let me straight away dive into the subject. We are in a time of considerable economic uncertainty across the globe. And whenever we see a certain kind of change in the economic environment globally, there is some impact felt by the IT sector. From your vantage point as the head of Nasscom, how are you seeing the headwinds of inflation, economic uncertainty, the conflict in Europe? How is all of that panning out for the IT sector?
So Siddharth, all of the factors that you talked about are indeed true, and what the industry generally describes as the macro situations, if you will, if not headwinds. So from our own point of view is that our industry is in a great position relative to these kind of situations, because during times of hardship, most companies need to tighten their belts, and they need to make sure that their efficiencies are they're at the top of their game in terms of efficiencies and so on, for which technology today is a very clear answer. Right? When there is boom time and companies are looking at growth and transformation, there again, technology in many ways is a determinant of the business capabilities that drive growth and transformation in most companies in most industries. So from that point of view, we as an industry are in a fairly good position to play a strategic role with our customers, either in terms of helping them manage the macro headwinds that buffet most industries today, or take advantage of the growth opportunities that may come from time to time. While there may be impact, obviously the last couple of years have been outstanding for the industry, although it went through a lot of difficulty initially and turbulence in between. Maybe the headwinds that you talked about might moderate things a little bit, but on an overall basis, I would say the industry is on a pretty strong wicket.
Okay, in the industry is on a pretty strong wicket. Those are good words there, because in the last few weeks alone, Krishnan, we've seen analysts at JP Morgan, Kotak and Nomura sound a bit of a caution on the sector and kind of, I'm summarizing their views, saying that the heydays may be over. In fact, JP Morgan has issued a downgrade and seems to be overweight only on 4 specific stocks, and there's a correction in the Nifty IT index as well. How would you read all of that?
So the way I look at it, Siddharth, is that the analysts know their jobs best, and I will leave them to it. Right? I think as an industry, it's best if we focus on the opportunities at hand and what we need to make sure that the competitiveness of our industry and the member companies is on a continuously increasing path, so that the strategic relevance that our member companies and India as a nation plays in the overall ecosystem driving technology for the world. Right? That will continuously be focused on and make sure that both the member companies and India as a destination, as a technology capital of the world, if you will, if I may be a bit ambitious and bold, that is the trajectory that we are on, and that is what we are very focused on.
Today, what is Nasscom? And is it just like any other industry body, or as I would argue, it is in fact an industry body which even the average Indian should keep track of?
Definitely the latter. And as the Nasscom chairman, I'm sure you'd expect me to be very objective in answering that question. But jokes apart, firstly, Nasscom is in this privileged position of being the industry body that represents what arguably is one of the most important industries in the Indian economy. Right? Just for starters, last year this industry crossed a big milestone of $200 billion. Right? In fact, we closed at $227 billion or thereabouts in terms of the overall industry, of which about $178 billion is export. In services export, this industry delivered about 51% of the overall services exports for the country, for the entire country, which means this industry alone exported more services than all other industries combined.
And
So
earns every other dollar India's annual foreign exchange earnings.
Exactly. So, being that preeminent industry and the body that represents the preeminent industry of India is a huge responsibility that Nasscom obviously takes very, very seriously. And we want to make sure that this pride of position is not only preserved, but also continuously enhanced. And that is going to be the focus and priority for Nasscom as we move forward. Particularly with respect to the coming year, Siddharth, if you ask me, I would articulate it in three dimensions. We in Nasscom. Firstly, we are very focused on reimagining India and ensuring that India is a preeminent digital talent hub for the world. That is mostly about ensuring the here and now, what has been accomplished, making sure that that continues on a steady path, right? That would mean ensuring our educational institutions offer curricula that is relevant for the industry, and we make sure that digital, where we have established a very, very strong competitive advantage, we continue to be the front runners in terms of enabling digital transformation in our customers and so on, largely about the here and now. The next tier of focus that we would like to drive at Nasscom is about maximizing the growth and innovation impact. Having done what we have accomplished, we want to make sure that all of the foundations that have been laid over the past several years do indeed have to deliver more, or capable of delivering more in terms of impact. And that is the second key priority that we'll drive at Nasscom, and that will involve delivering innovation as a key capability, the ecosystem that are relevant to drive innovation as a key capability in the country, and driving the skills agenda even further and so on. And thirdly, on an even broader footing, how do we expand the frontiers of this, what we call as a decade? Today, we have a very strong services industry and an emerging ecosystem of products, other technology startups, and so on. And where do we go from here? What about innovation superclusters? How about making sure that as a country, India continues on with the great competitive differentiation that it today establishes, but what are the next frontiers on that? How to establish diversity and inclusion as a key differentiator for India? How to make sure that sustainability is a key selling point for India, and things of that nature, where the competitive advantages for this industry continue on and we expand the frontiers of the field from which this industry can play. Those are the three horizons that we would like to focus on. And for each one of those, we have very clearly defined priorities and programs that are currently underway. And we couldn't be more excited, Siddharth.
Krishan, I'm going to also ask you a question which might sound a bit harsh in terms of the usage of the term, but it's also a reality, especially because one side of the coin is the celebrated Indian global IT company CEO, the faces of marquee firms, big names, and everyone knows those names, and including you and so many others who are really right at the top leading companies which are transforming the technology scale. The other side is that in a hushed way, some people still say, oh, but a bulk of the Indian IT workers are basically IT coolies. Is this categorization fair? And I know that it started somewhere around Y2K, so maybe this question is too old to even be asked, but I still want you to respond to that.
Yeah, so I haven't been asked this question in at least 10 years, Siddharth. So I thought we are well past this stage. But for those who might be calling the industry by that name, perhaps they should visit one of the facilities of some of the companies, leading companies, or even not so leading companies in this industry, to see the kind of, obviously the last couple of years, nobody has been in the office facilities, so they may be empty today. But the kind of facilities and the sophistication and the sheer investments that the companies have made in the future of their employees in terms of reskilling them, training them, both in terms of hard skills and soft skills, and making them relevant for the future, right? Secondly, if you look at it from the customer point of view, obviously, this is a globally competitive industry that practically every Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, Fortune 2000 company critically depends on. And this industry has built a name for itself and a name for India in the process as among the globally most competitive, if not the most competitive destination in the world for the IT services and allied areas. Right? When we look at those accomplishments that have been made by the industry, we are completely filled with pride at each one of us having had a very small role to play in the process. And critics will be critics. It costs them nothing to critique. But I think we need to be looking at the positive aspects of what have been accomplished and then soldier on and let our actions and accomplishments do the talking rather than keep responding to why it's not so.
What is the metaverse? I just saw before I came to this chat a fashion show happening on the metaverse, and I thought, oh well, that's a cool way to try out clothes without going to a store. But take it from here, Krishnan.
As a quick example, in TCS, I'll now wear my TCS hat. One of our major customers during the time of the pandemic, they had a big problem because the footfalls in their stores were drastically fallen. So how do you encourage customers to still come and shop, right? So they approached TCS and we came up with a metaverse-based solution to really recreate the experience of their flagship store in Manhattan. And we made it available on the metaverse so that people can do it on their mobile if they want, on their tablet or laptop or whatever may be the form factor. Right? We basically recreated the experience of someone, whether they're sitting in New York or they're sitting in Mumbai or Calcutta or wherever. They can actually have the experience of walking into their store in Manhattan and actually the same layout as they would find in real life, they would find in the metaverse. And they can actually pick up the objects that they want to look at, look around, even ask questions for a service assistant, all of those just on the metaverse. And they can actually do the transaction and buy if they want to buy something. Right? That's a fairly the use case that I'm describing right now is a fairly rudimentary example of what a metaverse is capable of. Then there are like this, there are hundreds of use cases that have been built for how to recreate a near real life experience virtually. And that is what, in a nutshell, Metaverse is all about. It's obviously an area that has got all of us excited because it creates so many possibilities for our industry to create great value for our customers. And we obviously believe that it will be an area of big growth for many of our companies. So currently it's on the hype cycle. There is a lot of hype about it, right? But it is an area, just like cloud, Metaverse is an area that I believe has great potential across the industry spectrum. And so I do believe that it will be a significant growth and transformation enabler for many of our customers. And because of that, to many of our member companies as well.